For the first time in modern history, a sitting American president has threatened to destroy the civilian power infrastructure of a sovereign nation. Iran's answer came within the hour. And it wasn't a denial, it was a target list. Trump's ultimatum was precise: open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, or the United States will begin destroying Iran's power stations, starting with the largest one. This is not a military target. This is electricity. This is industry. This is daily life. And what Tehran put on the table in response will force every government on Earth to make a decision they are not prepared for. That decision, and what it means for the next 72 hours, is what this video is about. But first, understand what is actually at stake in that narrow strip of water, because the number will shock you. Before this war, more than 130 vessels passed through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That number is now 3 or 4. Not 30, not 40. 3 or 4, 20% of the world's total oil supply moved through this corridor. Saudi Arabia's exports, Kuwait is production, Qatar's liquefied natural gas, the fuel that heats homes across Europe and Asia. All of it threaded through a waterway that is at its narrowest, just 20 kilometers wide. More than 20 commercial ships have already been attacked. Thousands of crew members remain stranded. Insurance companies have effectively stopped underwriting passage entirely. Iran's foreign minister framed this with surgical precision. The strait, he said, is open, but only to Iran's friends. Freedom of navigation cannot exist without freedom of trade. Respect both, or expect neither. That sentence is not rhetoric, it is a doctrine. And it tells you that Iran has no intention of backing down on a position it views as its single greatest surviving leverage over the entire Western-aligned world. Here is the part that gets stranger. Iran immediately published exactly what it will hit if Trump follows through. Within hours of Trump's ultimatum, Iran's military did something extraordinary. They published a map. Not a vague threat, not a diplomatic note through back channels. A public annotated map, with specific facilities marked across the Gulf states, Israel, and American-linked energy infrastructure throughout the region. In the UAE, the Baraka nuclear power complex and the Jebel Ali industrial facility. In Saudi Arabia, the Al Khuraya power stations and the Ras Tanura refinery. One of the largest in the world, already partially offline from an earlier drone strike. In Qatar, Ras Laffan and Al Hol, the industrial backbone of the world's top LNG exporter. In Kuwait, the Al Zar stations. These are not military facilities. These are the arteries of modern civilization in one of the world's most energy-dense regions. Iran's message was unmistakable: if our lights go out, the region's lights go out. And they added one more threat, one that went largely unreported: desalination plants. In a region where millions depend on desalinated water for daily survival, Iran placed those facilities on its retaliation list. This is no longer about missiles and bunkers. This is a threat to water. And this is where the strategic picture becomes something no Western analyst was fully prepared for. To understand why this ultimatum carries the weight it does, you need to understand the economic architecture of this war. Iran has now launched more than 940 ballistic missiles toward Israel since the conflict began. On one 24-hour period alone, 8 waves. Continuous Israeli defense systems fired somewhere between 700 and 1,0 interceptors to stop them. The math is devastating. Each Arrow interceptor $2 to $3 million. Each David's sling round, approximately $1 million. Even Iron Dome's cheapest interceptors cost $50,000 per launch. In that single 24-hour period, Israel expended somewhere between $800 million and $1.5 billion in defensive munitions. Iran's entire offensive, 140 missiles, cost perhaps $50 to $70 million to produce. Israel spent 15 to 30 times more defending than Iran spent attacking. In one day, this is not a war of attrition that favors the defender. This is a war that Iran designed specifically to drain the financial and physical capacity of its opponents faster than those opponents can replenish. The United States manufactures approximately 6 to 8 Arrow interceptors per month. Israel burned through potentially 200 in one day. The arithmetic on resupply doesn't work, not even close. And now, layered on top of this interceptor crisis, comes the question of what happens if America actually strikes Iran's power grid. Because the secondary effects reach far beyond Tehran. For weeks, Europe watched this war from what it assumed was a safe distance. That assumption collapsed when Iranian missiles reached Diego Garcia. A strike that revealed a range extension beyond 30 kilometers, putting targets from London to Berlin inside a circle that European defense planners had never drawn. Germany and Britain began running scenarios, not hypotheticals, active scenarios on strikes against bases, cities, and infrastructure. London discovered that it had been operating under a false ceiling of immunity. Israeli intelligence communicated the scale of the threat directly to British officials. Iranian firepower, the message said, can reach London. Britain's response was not more diplomacy. The nuclear attack submarine, HMSN, one of the Royal Navy's most advanced vessels, carrying Tomahawk cruise missiles with a range of 1,600 kilometers, was quietly repositioned to the northern Arabian Sea. No announcement. No press conference. The submarine simply appeared in the region, armed and waiting for orders. At the same time, Britain expanded its authorization for the United States to use British bases, not just for defensive interception, but for offensive operations protecting shipping routes through Hormuz. This is the architecture of escalation. It doesn't announce itself, it just moves. And now with oil at $108 per barrel and climbing, the calculus for every European government is shifting in real time. When the threat of Iranian retaliation costs less than the ongoing price of Iranian disruption, the incentive structure inverts. But here is what makes the next 48 hours genuinely unpredictable. Iran's own internal structure is beginning to fracture. 3 weeks into this conflict, 3 Western objectives have visibly failed. Regime change. The regime is still standing. Elimination of the missile threat. Iran just executed 8 wave attacks in 24 hours. Regional stabilization. 7 American service members are dead. Oil is above $100, and every Gulf state is privately negotiating with Tehran to avoid becoming the next target. The former supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed in a decapitation strike. A new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, was installed within 8 days. The IRGC command structure held. The missile waves never stopped. Iran absorbed a shock designed to collapse it, and instead used it as a mobilizing force for prolonged resistance. But look closer, and the signs of fracture are real, even if they're not yet fatal. Reports have emerged of internal turmoil within the IRGC's Aerospace and Space Force Command. Accusations of absent leadership, families of fighters complaining of inaccurate battlefield data being passed upward. The new supreme leader has not appeared publicly, not once, since taking power. In a regime built on visible authority, that absence signals something. Israeli analysts have been explicit. No one expected the regime to collapse during the war itself. The more realistic projection is that it fractures in the months after, through economic strangulation, sustained infrastructure damage, and a possible American move to seize Karg Island, Iran's primary oil export facility. That seizure, if it comes, would cut the regime's ability to pay salaries, fund the military, and maintain basic state functions. The regime hasn't fallen, but it is running. And this is where the 48-hour clock becomes the most dangerous variable in the entire conflict. Here is what makes the next 48 hours unlike anything that has come before in this conflict. Every previous escalation in this war has been calibrated. Strikes on missile facilities, targeted decapitations, responses designed to demonstrate capability without triggering the next threshold. Trump's ultimatum abandons that calibration. Threatening civilian power infrastructure is a different category of act. It is the category that precedes siege. It is the language of total economic warfare. Iran's response, the published target map, the desalination threat, the reaffirmation that Hormuz will remain closed, tells you that Tehran has made its own calculation. They believe that surrendering control of the strait, even under existential pressure, is more dangerous to the regime's survival than continued bombardment. Because the moment they open Hormuz under an American ultimatum, the leverage is gone forever. So neither side has an exit. America cannot back down from a 48-hour ultimatum without signaling strategic weakness to every adversary watching. Iran cannot comply without dismantling its last remaining instrument of global leverage. The coalition is building around them. 6 countries became 20 in under a week as the economic pain of closed shipping routes overrides the fear of Iranian retaliation. Europe is repositioning naval assets. Gulf states are calculating their threshold. What you are watching is not a regional conflict that has gotten complicated. What you are watching is the moment when a regional conflict becomes a test of the global order itself. So, will Iran open the strait? The answer from every available signal is no. Not because they can't, because from where Tehran stands, the strait is the only remaining proof that they survived. Trump will have to escalate or absorb the strategic cost of an unanswered ultimatum.